Welcome
to IQ session number 34. We've been doing these for 34 weeks, which is awesome. Every Thursday night, educating you guys on all things fit body and fit mind. We like it.
And we've done a macros session quite a few weeks ago, wasn't it?
It was like 16 weeks ago.
Okay, cool. So this one's a really popular one because it's a really good understanding about food, really, is what it's all about. And it comes down to, like Sheridan said today, we've actually got a PowerPoint presentation, so we're fancy. But what it comes down to is we really need to know. Point number one, I'm going to put it really clear right from the start, is that your caloric number, the number you worked out at the start of the challenge, is the most important thing.
Yeah.
We do not want you to bog down in macronutrients, focusing on those and being really disappointed that you're not hitting these things. It'll make more sense when we talk about it. But remember that the primary focus as a minimum is to hit that number and not bog down if you're not quite nailing the macros, which will make sense, like I said, as we go through. So the number one thing that you need to take away from this is that my caloric number that I've got.
That's your calories, the calories number that you've calculated.
Yeah, is the primary focus. That is more important than understanding the macros, than to nailing the macros. Okay, that's my first point.
Yeah,
easy. And just like it's kind of like a little disclaimer, isn't it?
It is.
Like, make sure you know that part.
All right, let me start. How do I start this? Like, whoa. Let me do this. Play from start. Here we go. Can you guys see that? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see that? Excellent. All right. What are macros? So just reiterating your point.
Yeah, exactly. We all have that number, which is what we're talking about. Go next one, please. Which is this one here.
So this is the formula that you worked out at the start of the challenge, either by 11 for rapid weight loss, by 12 for steady weight loss. And these numbers is made up by macronutrients. So macronutrients are the breakdown of your food. So no matter what you eat, anything that goes into your body, it fits into one of four categories. It is either a combination of or solely fat, protein, carbohydrates, or alcohol. They're the four types of things that you put into your body. That's how food is broken down, and that is your body's fuel source. So it's kind of like our car takes diesel, some cars take petrol, etc., etc.
Exactly right.
Thank you. Look at me go.
And so basically, though, most of you had it dialed in the chat there, which is perfect. It is all about the breakdown of food. So anything that goes into your body has a macronutrients component to it, be it fats, carbs, proteins, or alcohol. And it's made up of all those things. Now, we'll go through these things throughout the slideshow, which is really, really cool. But what you need to realize, and I think you put it best, Sheridan, it's like...
I always put it best, Matt.
Well, can you share with what I'm talking about?
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Cut yourself up there. I know you talk about the accountability, that the food will count whether you count.
Oh, yes. Whether you keep an accurate account of what you eat, your body, whether you do or not, your body will keep an accurate account for what you eat. So whether you do the sneaky, I'm not going to enter that into my fitness pal, so it doesn't count, your body will account for that. So that's the important part.
100%. It's just really, really, really important to do. Now, when you go through macros and you start looking at things, you actually pay attention to the calories and all that sort of stuff there. Some of it's almost a little confronting and almost a little embarrassing because you don't actually realize that something healthy, typically healthy according to the health and fitness world, is actually quite detrimental to your big number. So example.
And to your goals.
And to your goals, yeah. So example, we all hear that nuts and things like that are really, avocado and stuff like that, all healthy, good fats, all that sort of stuff. And when you go through the session, you're going to find out a little bit more about that. But quite often you still have to count, and quite often a little amount of those healthy things are actually very high in a number form, which is what we do. So macros are a breakdown of those fundamentals. All right, balance. This is... the key to it all is having a healthy balance and not a swayed lifestyle. So what that means is if, for example, Sheridan wanted to only eat fat and all that sort of stuff there.
So that's the one of the latest fads is the keto diet. Yep. Just eating fat, so you only burn fat and you lose fat.
Cool. And 100% it works. If you did that only, it would work, which is fantastic, which is really cool. Also,
hang on, before you go any further though, any diet will work.
Coming back to that one.
Sorry.
Yeah, right. My point was coming back this way too. So anyway,
we've clearly discussed this a lot.
all the if you go purely fat and you keep to that big number, that primary number, one thing we talked about is your number, overall number, and you keep those numbers within that number, it will work 100%. No drama there. If you swing it back the other way and you do the same thing with only carbohydrates and do the other spectrum of it, and you only do that but still stay within your number, that would work. They both work. There's no right, wrong. The number is the key to it all at the start. The challenge with it is they're so aggressive in one form of substrate that it's not sustainable for the rest of your life. Because the reality is, if I only ate fat, the challenge I have with that is the world is made of carbohydrates, fruits, veggies, grains, breads. The whole world is made of carbs. So why would you neglect having them just to be strict to do this fat deal when you can have a balance of both and enjoy food, which this whole challenge is about enjoying your food, so that you can enjoy the process and not miss out on things, because my life is all about keto.
Well, and I think probably one of the greatest ways to look at this is a lot of you here are parents. Now, take yourself out of it because you're emotionally involved. And how would you like to parent your children? Like, would you like them to be so extreme that they only ate fat and they couldn't possibly look at an apple because it's a carbohydrate? No, you would like, I'm sure I'm going to go out on a whim here and say, you want your children to grow up being really balanced, educated, smart, wise children that turn into adults that can make really informed, great decisions and enjoy every part of life and that it has to offer, not just fat, not just keto is life, baby, and that's all we're going to do. So that's how we want to educate, we want to share with you guys, is that that's what life's about. You know, if you're doing keto only and Matt and I invite you out to come and have pizza or pasta with us, you can't. And so are you going to miss out on those life experiences just because you're keto for life?
Yeah. Or you're carbs only, or there's so many different things. They all work because they only work because they're generally based around a deficit of calories, which is that big number we told you to hit each week, which is already in a deficit. Even though it may seem ridiculously high, it is low compared to your body weight. So the idea is that if you could, I love answering this question, if you could have a balance of fruits, veggies, you could have the pasta, you could have the pizza, as long as you stay within that number and still achieve your goals, why would you not want that? You obviously eat those things because you love them, and that's the key to it. So too much of one thing is always a bad thing, because it's not sustainable forever. It's sustainable for a period, and it's a good tool from time to time to be able to use if you really wanted to. But the reality is you always come back this way to what you love and do. So why wouldn't you just want to control that and be great and enjoy the food that you clearly love, and then achieve the goals that you want to do, eating the foods you love? And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago too. Is like, this challenge, I believe, is almost anticlimactic, because we literally tell you to eat everything, just watch that number, and at the end of it, you see results. And so you kind of can't go out and go, finally, I get to eat
my burger,
Hungry Jack's or my burger or something, because you should have been eating it all the way through and just counting what you're eating. And then you get to enjoy the whole way through. So there's none of this overindulging at the end of a challenge, because the idea is that you've enjoyed the challenge, and that's what we want to get through to you. And understanding the macros allows you to tweak and do that stuff, and still enjoy it, and just be aware why you maybe sometimes you can go, I'm just not seeing results. I'm a little bit squidgy. I'm losing weight, but I'm still a bit soft around this area. And then when you look at your macros, you go, oh, wow, my macros are quite heavily fat dominant, or maybe your energy is low, so we need to increase the carbohydrates, or you can start to tweak things and adjust and go from there.
And based off your specific needs for getting through your day, and all that kind of thing too. But another point I want to reiterate, and we've said it a lot, and I want to say it again before we move on into explaining further, there are no such things as bad foods. There's just too much of something. So no food is bad. Fats aren't bad. Carbohydrates aren't bad. Protein's not bad. Alcohol's not bad. It's just there's too much of anything is bad.
Yeah. Easy.
Cool. Because food is meant to be enjoyed. It's delicious. Otherwise, we would just eat like dog food and like just pellets. Yeah, like a cup. And you anyway.
I don't know if that's the right example there, but
they don't really go for flavor, surely. They just eat anything. Yeah. They eat their own poo. Things you need to know about macros. All right, let's start off with carbohydrates. Now, I'm very passionate pro carbohydrate. If there's one thing I would love to educate people on, is that carbs are your friend. Because so many people are like, oh, I'm losing weight, it's because I've cut carbs. I'm like, oh, you've cut vegetables, have you? Because carbs are your friends. And what a lot of people don't recognize is that fruit and vegetables are carbohydrates. Yes, bread and pasta and stuff is carbohydrates too, but don't buddy up your fruits and vegetables with breads and pastas, because they're good for you. Everything's good for you, but carbs are your friends. And newsflash, carbohydrates will not make you fat. Wow. What?
Wow. And you can argue that, because if you eat too much of one thing, then they do have the ability to turn to fat. Now, I have to clarify this too. So this is why carbs get a bad name, because they have the ability to turn to fat. I'm about to explain what that actually looks like. So I'm going to give you an example. The example goes like this. They did a study on a guy and they made him drink 3 liters of pure glucose, which is carbohydrates, 100% carbohydrates. And they gave it to him in a liquid form because it was easier to give him that than 3 kilograms of carbohydrates. So they put pure glucose into his body, which means it goes into the system, into the bloodstream, and goes to wherever it needs to go to. It is a primary source of energy. So it's instantaneous energy. It's excitement. You're high in life and all that sort of stuff there.
It's like the typical kid sugar high kind of thing.
And however, that your body can only hold up to one time about 450 grams to 500 grams of carbs at any one time. So this person has now got in their system 3,000 gram equivalent of carbohydrates in their body. So they're well in excess of a stupid amount of carbs, right? Only carbs, no protein, so it can only focus on the carbs. That means there's 2,500 grams extra that are in the system, which means that it has to turn to fat. Of that 3 liters that went in, that 3,000, only 30 grams of that turned to fat. 30 grams out of all that carbohydrate. Now, this is where it gets pretty crazy, because if you think about this, if you've had 3,000, which is a stupid amount of carbohydrates for any one person to have anyway, and only 30 grams of it turned to fat, how much of that would you have to be doing to become obese on a daily basis? See, that's too much of one thing, and that's how the bad thing come into place. And they label carbs as bad because they can turn to fat.
So they have the ability to, but only at an extreme level.
Excessive amount.
Now, in that process of turning carbohydrates into fats, you actually burn calories. And so the process of turning it actually burns it, so there's not as much there to convert to fat anyway, which is why only 30 grams turn to fat in the end as well.
Exactly. And one of the things you need to know about carbohydrates is that it's the only nutrient, the macronutrient, that the brain needs to function on. It doesn't need fats, it doesn't need alcohol, it doesn't need protein, it needs carbohydrates. It's an energy source that it requires. So if you go pure keto and only do fat is life, live the dream, all that sort of stuff that way, the challenge with that is that you are depriving your brain, and quite often you'll find yourself in a bit of la-la land because you're carb depleted.
So Matt did a bodybuilding competition quite some years ago, probably 7 years ago.
Something like that.
And he did a very aggressive approach and lost
I was doing 700 calories a day for 8 weeks straight. I was just deplete.
Completely depleted. Anyway, so this brain fog is 100% true. We went to the supermarket together to get eggs because keto is life for this guy over here at that time. No, because he was on such low calories, no carbohydrates. And we walked into the supermarket. We were at a different supermarket than we usually go to. He stood in the aisle, looked up at the aisle sign, and literally stayed there for the time that it took me to go grab eggs, grab something else, and come back to him and go, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm looking for eggs." I'm like, "Oh, I've got him, dummy." Because he's so brain fogged and has no fuel for his brain to function that he literally stood there for a good 10 plus minutes looking at the same sign, looking for eggs.
So if you ever see someone doing a bodybuilding competition, coming into the competition, they deplete all carbohydrates because it draws your skin in, so it makes everything tighter because you deplete all that nutrients in it, and they take all the water out of you, so you're dehydrated and you're starving and you're just flighty. If you ever see them leading into a competition 2 weeks out, they'll be in la la land, and they'll be
100%.
snappy. They won't be happy. And it's because they depleted carbohydrates, and apparently it's just what you do. So I used to mock them all the time. So I thought I'd better try it before I mock it. I can't do that. So I went down and did the process. So now I can do it, and now I can mock it because I've done it. I have proof that it's silly and stupid. And
as a wife of someone doing it, I would not recommend it.
Yeah, and it's a hang up. Like you get so obsessive about things.
Anyway, back to carbohydrates. 1 gram of carbohydrates is 4.5 calories. That's really important to know, especially when we come to the fat section, but we will reiterate that. But it is your body's primary source of energy. So if you're doing the keto life, so full fat and only eating fat, the moment a carbohydrate enters your body instantly burns that first because it is the preferred source. So it's like if I presented to you a cheese platter, you're going to go for your favorite cheese first. You ain't going to leave it to last. You're going to try it first. Same deal with the body. It goes straight to carbohydrates, using that as the fuel source first.
Yeah. And it's really pretty instantaneous. It's like, and if you think of a diabetic, when they're crashing and they're low, the first thing you give them is sugar or a carbohydrate because it's instant. It's straight switch, bang, you got energy. It's how they peak out straight away once they have this bit of sugar in their body. So hence Coca-Cola and stuff like that is so high in sugar, but it gets an instant energy reaction because the body accepts it straight away and uses it straight away.
So carbohydrates, they're things like fruits, vegetables, oats, grains, pastas, breads, all that kind of thing. They're predominantly carbohydrates. Doesn't mean that those foods don't also have a little bit of fat or a little bit of protein as well, but predominantly those are carbohydrates.
Easy.
Cool.
And quite often with the veggies and stuff like that, while we're still on carbohydrates, if I have 100 grams of vegetables, say an apple, if I have 100 grams of apple and I have 100 grams of a lolly, which is pure carbohydrate, and the apple is carbohydrate, they're both the same. My body doesn't know which is which. It doesn't know that it's an apple, doesn't know that it's a lolly. It only knows that it's a carbohydrate, which means that it breaks it down and turns it into energy. It doesn't matter what kind of carbohydrate I have. It only knows the result of breaking it down. So it doesn't know it's an apple. It doesn't know that it's a lolly. They're both the same. The difference is that the apple comes with added benefits versus the lolly does not. 100 grams of each, exactly the same in the body, except for the apple comes with phytochemicals, it comes with antioxidants, minerals, fiber. It comes with all these benefits that the lolly does not. Same in the body, benefits of the fruit and vegetables is higher. It comes with extras that your body loves and needs and thrives on versus the lolly. But in its mildest form, when it goes into the body, they are the same thing. Cool?
Very cool. Very cool. All right, next one is protein. All right, this one too is 1 gram is 4.5 calories per gram. Now, protein, these are your things like your meats, your fishes. There's protein in dairy. There is some protein in like leafy green vegetables and things like that, but predominantly we refer to protein as your meats and your fishes and stuff like that too, and eggs as well. Now, this one's quite a one that we wanted to focus on a little bit more this time around because it is so important. This one here is responsible for the repair of hair, skin, nails, and muscles. So if your nails are brittle and they're breaking, if your hair snaps off, if your skin doesn't repair very well, if you're feeling injured, you're getting injured more easily than normal, maybe your protein is a little lacking. Now, the one challenge I have with protein in the health and fitness industry is that you see muscle guys talking about protein, that's why I'm big. No, that's not why you're big. You don't need to have protein powders to get your protein. You can do it through fruits, through healthy eating and stuff like that, not out of a packet. Matt and I personally don't take protein powders or anything like that either. Now, when you have an excess of protein, you just poo it out. It doesn't store anywhere, it doesn't turn to fat, you poo it out.
That's it. Your body craves a certain amount and then it literally gets rid of the rest. So, but the key to this one is, like Sheridan brought up before, is that it's responsible for repairing your hair, skin, nails, and your muscles, right? So it has a repairing mechanism. So it's very important when you're exercising and you're embarking on something like that, because its properties is to help you get better quicker. So when you exercise and you feel those DOMs, which is when your muscles are sore and you can't sit down on the toilet and all that sort of stuff, that what you're looking for is you're searching for some proteins that your body will take from the food after it breaks it down and poos out the rest. It takes what it needs from it. It gives your body what it does. And it basically, they go to work and they get into the bloodstream and they do what they need to do and go where they need to go. And we had a lovely chat with one of our members today, and she was, couldn't for the life of her understand what was going on with her, like her body and stuff like this. And so we had a look at her numbers and had a look at her macros, and her protein levels were so low that it was a primary concern for us, because it was affecting her hair, her skin, her nails, and she was getting injured a lot.
So she was hitting her numbers, which is sensational because that's your first step. But then her balance of food needed to be tweaked slightly, because her body was presenting symptoms to say, I actually need more of something. So this is a good time for you to kind of analyze your body and say, all right, what is it telling me that I need right now? Are my nails breaking? Is my skin and like dull and not great? Is my hair dull and breaking and stuff like that? And that is a really good sign that you actually do need to possibly not hitting enough protein in your diet.
Yeah, and quite often if you're full vegan, or you're full, like in your extreme in one area, you quite often find it's hard to create that protein source naturally from fruits and vegetables and stay within your numbers, because you have to have an excess of fruits and vegetables to get that protein number up. That's the hard part, versus having fish and meats and stuff like that. They're very high. They come with a natural source of protein, so it bumps you up pretty quickly. So again, extreme in one generally deprives you of something in another area, and quite often it's protein because of the lack of meat or lack of
and I can attest to that. I was vegan for 7 years, and it's definitely a lot harder to get protein in being a vegan, but I've since adding in fish into my seafood into my diet, a huge difference for me. And eggs as well.
And it's really important to know that excess protein, like Sheridan said before, it's on the slide there, you'll see, but it doesn't make you bigger. Like the packages tell you that if you take the dude that's jacked up on the front of this protein thing, you get massive muscles and that's life and that's how you do it. That's not how the body works, unfortunately. The body can only take so much, and like Sheridan said, it just poos the rest out. So what they're saying is, to be big and buff, you need to do this. Unfortunately, that's wrong. It's actually taking steroids, and eating too much will make you big. That's the difference. If you eat lots, you put on mass, and that's the difference between it all. And so what we're looking to do there is we're looking to get rid of that that philosophy in your head that by eating lots of protein you get jacked and big. It's no, you're eating lots of food gets you big. And so the other thing is with steroids is when quite often a bodybuilder is talking to you, or someone who's heavily in the gym and stuff like that, and they are on steroids, they quite often have the number one side effect of steroids, which is memory loss. Because if you ask them how they got big and massive, they say, oh, it's just protein. I just had the protein.
It's never the steroids.
They forget they even took the steroids, but you can tell that they're on them. So the idea is that you find a healthy balance in your life to do that. And if you do want to put on size, that comes from a larger form of increasing your calories. It's a totally different focus. And but you guys are here in a transformation challenge, and we're going the other way, so we're not going to focus on that. But please know that having protein, an excessive protein, does not make you jacked. Steroids do, and overeating does. That's the best way to do it. That's the easiest way to understand it.
But getting enough protein into diet is super, super important, again, because we're focusing on that healthy, balanced lifestyle. All right, the next one, Fat Town, baby.
All right, this is one of it was a highlight from the last time we did it, but
so the first thing I want to point your attention to is that in protein and carbohydrates, 1 gram of protein and carbohydrates is 4.5 calories. Now you'll notice that 1 gram of fat is 9 calories, double the amount in calories. That means that if you choose to go a keto diet, you can literally have half the amount of food, because it's double in value, in caloric value.
Unfortunately, you don't get to eat as much. And because that big number that we told you about at the start, the number one thing that's the most important thing is that number you still have to hit that number. It's regardless of what you're doing, it has to be that number. Sorry, our dogs are sooking. And that's, at the end of the day, that's kind of what's important. So always hitting that number is important. 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. And the key here is to understand that fat stores as fat. I don't care if you say it's good fat or bad fat, or it's heart tick approved fat, or it's whatever it is that you're looking at, it stores as fat. So when the fat enters the body, it just goes in and it goes to where it needs to go to. It just literally has a position it needs to make it get to in the body, and it just slips straight on in there. It doesn't have to do much. You don't have to break down the molecules. It goes in as fat, stores as fat. So it's really quick, the process of putting fat into the body, which is pretty cool. And the conversion of doing that is very, very simple. It's not complex for it. It literally loves it.
And did you know your body can have an unlimited amount of fat cells? So what happens is the fat cells get full, and then they split into 2, and then they get full and they split into 2. And you literally have billions of fat cells, and they have the ability to multiply to an infinite amount. So you literally, there's no cap to how fat you can get. I don't recommend testing that theory. Just take my word for it, please. But fat just goes to fat. Fat straight to fat. Now, whether you have, so the whole very recently over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of push for like things like avocados and stuff because they're good fats. Fat's still fat. Whether it's a good fat or a bad fat, it's still fat. Again, there's no bad foods. There's actually no bad fats, but good fats still store as fat. So we need to limit the amount that we have of these because they store as fat. There's unlimited amount of fat stores in your body, and that's where you can go a little squidgy and get a little overweight.
Exactly right. And this picture of this the slide is perfect. So you've got the 2 slides on the outside, and they're spiraling down, coming down like that. That would be the equivalent of the protein and the carbohydrates, because they've got things they need to do. So they've got processes. They go in as a food. They have to break down. They have to turn. The proteins need to get to the hair, needs to get in the bloodstream, get to the hair, the skin, the nails, and the muscles. It's going to go do its part in the body. So that's a process. It takes time. It's got to break apart. It's got to reform the molecules and put it to where it needs to go to. The carbohydrates do the exact same thing. It needs to feed into the bloodstream, give us our natural source of energy. It creates this amazing body. So that's a process. So that takes time. Those slides that are down the middle, those straight shots, we call them, it's heading to Fat Town, baby.
Fat Town, baby.
That is it. You have the fat come into your body. It goes straight down and it just packs in like mud to a mud side of a muddy bank. Like just keep packing it in. And that's what it does. It doesn't matter how you look at it. It just has a straight shot. It's the quick line to get to where it needs to get to, which is why allowing yourself to look at that particular part of your macro balance is important, because if it's slanted, but you're still having carbohydrates, the fat's just storing. It needs to be balanced, and you have to have fat. You can't avoid fat. You don't want to have no fat at all because your body requires it. But you have to be aware, like Sharon said right at the beginning, of if you don't account for it and you're going into your body will account for it. And that's where you get yourself into trouble when you look at things like avocado. It's such a tiny amount of avocado comes with such a high amount of fat.
Especially if you're going out for like a brunch at a cafe and they do beautiful food and stuff. And you get a smashed avocado because it's the healthy option. But the amount of avocado that always comes out of these things is like incredible.
They're very generous.
Very generous.
They're so expensive.
They're very expensive. I wouldn't be doing that. I'd be rationing that baby. Yeah. But you just have to account for it and be aware of it, that although it's avocado, it's from a ground, it's healthy, it's still going to go straight to Fat Town, baby.
And that's literally one of the key things you need to take from this, is that if you're having high amount of fat things, so we've told you that eating your number is number one. That's the primary concern, right? You're hitting that number. It doesn't matter if the fat's out the whack. If that's the way it is, if you still hit the number, you're going to have a result. You may not have the results that you want, but you are going to get a result because that number's based around that. The challenge is, though, if you don't have balance and you are slanted in one direction, you don't have enjoyment. And if you don't have enjoyment, you're generally going to give up at some stage because it's getting hard. You don't see what you want to see. But if you just take a look at your balanced wheel and just see, is it slanted too much in one direction, you can make a tweaks ever so slightly and have such a dramatic result in seeing your body get to a different point of view. And that's the really important thing to take from that.
It is.
Which is and here is a beautiful picture, and it's such a true representation of the hang up we have in the fitness profession.
Chuck out the scales if you haven't already.
You can see here on the left hand side, if you're looking at your screen, there is the fat, the large clump of fat, and the muscle is so sleek and it's lean, it's very tender looking. So everyone always tells me this, well, not everyone, a lot of people, always tell me this, that that muscle weighs more than fat. And I call bullshit on that, because 2 kgs of fat is the same as 2 kgs of muscle. There's no difference in that.
It's just the same as 2 kilos of feathers is the same weight as 2 kilos of bricks.
So the difference is that fat is a massy product. It's very clumpy. It's not sexy. That looks terrible. It looks yuck.
It's literally like double the size right there of the muscle. Yeah. So it's not that this is why we want you to chuck out those scales, because if your body's converting your body composition, so if you're leaning down and you're growing muscle, your body is going to shift. And this is why photos are so powerful, because who the hell cares how much you weigh? You didn't buy your t-shirt based off how many kilograms you are. You wouldn't even have any idea of how much I weigh. You would have no idea how much Matt weighs, because it does not matter. We don't walk around with a number on our head. We only see our size. We see our shape. We buy a t-shirt based on our measurements. And this is where it changes for you, because if you're reducing fat, whether or not you're increasing muscle or not, your body is going to change size. Yeah. And whether your scales change or not, you'll physically look different.
Mm-hmm. And ladies, your body composition is your muscles are designed to be lean and sleek and sexy. That's just how they go. Men are designed to be big and bulky. It's just how we're genetically made up. It's how you were made to be that way. It was back in the hunter and gatherer days. Men had to go hunt and forage and do that sort of stuff there and bring back the meat and stuff. So they have the ability to put muscle on quickly and lose weight fast, because they store it fast too. They chuck it in their guts really fast. It's like a big, what do you guys call it? Esky. Just keep packing it in there. And then when you go and use it and they start exercising, all of a sudden it just peels off a guy, and it annoys the crap out of ladies.
Oh, doesn't it? Like, if you're ever doing a weight loss challenge, transformation challenge with your husband, and they just like lose weight by thinking about it. And ladies, we have to like not think.
You have to hustle, because you're not designed. You're actually designed to hold fat. You're actually designed for reproduction. That's the primary purpose of a female's body, is to have a baby. It's one of those things that you're designed to do. So that means you hold fat for storage for the day that you have to support a child. That's the whole purpose. That's why when females have children, it's a slower process getting rid of the fat out of their body by the other end of it, because their body's holding on to it just in case they have another child, and it's a slower process. Men, on the other hand, don't have that. We just get out, go exercise, and it starts to peel off really fast. But our muscles are designed to protect. So they're designed to be stronger. So it frustrates a lot of females, because men seem to be able to do it a lot easier than females. And that's not every male is stronger in that way, and not every female is the same, but it's predominantly that way. About 80% of men are like that, and 20% of females are like that. So go. So you were cutting me off, so there you go.
No, I wasn't. All right, so we've kind of covered this part already, but really focusing on Fat Town. If your body is squidgy and you want to lean it out, this is where you really need to take into account of how much fat you're having into your diet. And so this is where the macro percentage comes into play. Now, the beautiful thing is I want you to talk about quickly the respiratory quotient.
Oh, yes. Okay,
pretty please.
Cool. We're about to get techie. I do apologize.
Yeah, so bear with us on this bit. This is a little bit hard to understand.
Okay, cool. It's called the respiratory quotient. So I'm going to make it really simple to understand. So imagine your body has the ability to burn fat and carbohydrates, because there are energy sources, right? So it has the ability. And I want you to imagine, can we take it off there and put it just on me so that they can see me? I'm not trying to get in this little box. Cool.
There you go.
So I want you to imagine over this way, there we go, that this spectrum here is fat and this one here is carbohydrates, right? And my head in the center is like a literally like this. So it's moving along, and wherever I am.
This is how your body burns fuel, by the way.
Easy. So if I'm only eating fat, it means I would shift down to this end here, and I would be burning fat, right? So I have to pull from the fat stores in my body, and I burn those things. So
if I do these for you.
Cool, easy. If this is fat, I'm going to come along here. If I'm down here and I'm only eating fat, I will burn fat. That's what we were talking about before. But we also said before that doing that is extreme, and doing one thing overboard is not sustainable. So although you have a result short term, the moment you have carbohydrates, you swing back this way. So the challenge is with a lot of people who have a lot of carbohydrates is they never get over to this side to burn the fat. So what they tend to do is they eat a lot of carbohydrates, rice, crackers, chips, vegetables, fruits, whatever it is. And that's the primary source of energy. So we always sit down this end because we eat a lot of carbohydrates, which is fine. But the reality is that if you don't get over to this side, to fat town, baby, you can't burn it. So the idea is that if you eat all the fat, you'll burn fat, right? If you eat all the carbohydrates, you'll burn carbohydrates. The difference, though, which a lot of people don't focus on, is if they could sit in the middle and focus on fitness, getting fitter, not hanging up on all fat or carbs, or how much should I be having. But if you only focus on getting really fit, you have the ability to use the energy from the carbohydrates and burn the fat, and you tap into both. So this is the whole point of this challenge, is that you eat what you want, capped numbers, but you're going to get yourself super fit, right? We're 2 weeks in, we're into the third week now. We're talking a little bit deeper now. We said just focus on your numbers, don't overcomplicate it. This week, we want you to focus on having a look at the macros, just see if you're spending a lot of time in the fat town, or maybe you're not spending enough time in the fat town because you're stacking it with food, but you need not fit enough yet. So what you're going to do is focus on getting super fit so that you can burn carbohydrates and fat, because fitness solves that challenge. Food is only one component of it.
Yeah.
But when you get the balance of fitness, and I'm not saying a certain type of thing, I'm just saying getting your body fit for yourself, you will start to swing into both zones. So when the carbohydrates are empty, because they can have up to 450 to 500 grams of carbs at one time, they shift over to the fat and they start burning the fat. Then when you have another bit of fuel source, of course, it comes with carbohydrates. So it shifts back this way. It starts burning the carbohydrates. Once those carbohydrates are empty, it shifts back to the fat.
And because when you get super fit, you start burning more at rest.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the beauty of it. So we really want to get that in before we move on to this next part. So making sure that you're super fit helps with the macronutrient side of things as well. Because whether you're having good fats or bad fats, it's still fat. And if you're not super fit and you're not being able to burn both carbs and fat, then it just goes straight to fat town, baby. And that's where it packs, and et cetera, et cetera. Now, going back to the squidgy side of things, if you're a little bit squidgy, this is what the client that we spoke to this morning about with the protein side of things is. Her concern is that she doesn't need to lose weight because she's beautifully tiny, but she said she's squidgy. So we looked at her macronutrients, and it's because her protein is so low, but her fat is so dominant. So we need to shift the balance of her food. She's just slightly got the wrong composition of her food. Now I'm going to give you a couple of options here that you can play around with whatever works for you. And this is how this is your aim for your macronutrient balance. So this is where you probably need to write this down. As a standard, we recommend, especially for women, 50% carbohydrates, 30% protein, 20% fat. That's kind of like your target. Now, it's very rare that you're going to smash it. Very rare. But you just want to be heading in that right direction. I'm going to say that again. 50% carbs, 30% protein, 20% fat. Now, there's a couple of other variations. You can do 40% carbs, 30% protein, 30% fat. And then more so for the men's side of things that are wanting to really make sure they're putting on size and stuff, then we would go 40% carbs, 40% protein, 20% fat. But ladies especially, we like you to start around the 50% carbs, 30% protein, 20% fat. Now, this is your targets. These are your guidelines. But again, it's going to be very rare that you smash it. Like mine's very much just in that kind of ballpark, just around that.
Yeah. And the reason for it is that carbohydrates give you energy, and we want the energy to be able to burn calories, right? And Sheridan mentioned it before, but we didn't quite touch on it, is that exercise, if 100% was the circle, 15% of that energy that's spent towards your calories is from exercise. So that's it. Of your daily burning, only 15% of it comes from exercise. There's another 15% that comes from what we call thermogenics, which is your body's ability to heat and cool itself down, which is when you start shivering, your body's actually burning calories to do that. It's actually vibrating your body to burn energy and keep you warm. That's why you start shivering. It's actually trying to warm you up. And when you start sweating, same thing, the body's regulating heat. So 15% comes from day-to-day, like sweating and perspiration and cooling and heating yourself up. And then the other 15% comes from exercise, but everything else comes from rest. That 70% of your day is when you burn the most calories doing nothing. But the key to that nothing is making sure that the fuel source is optimally burning at its highest rate, which is why that 15% of exercise calories is low. But the difference is when you get really super fit is that you burn at a higher frequency in the 70% of resting.
And in that as well, the more muscle you have, the more calories you burn at rest too. So first and foremost, it's a lot of people will say the weight loss game is 80% food, 20% exercise. It's 100% exercise, 100% food. You can't have one without the other. And you really need to make sure you're on that. But the fitter and the stronger you get, the easier it becomes for you because you're giving yourself a leg up. And then you need to approach your making sure that you're hitting your numbers of your calories, you're not overshooting them, and you're also not undershooting them too, because you do need fuel to burn fuel. So, and then we go into the next step down is these macronutrients, just so that you can fine tune and tweak, so that if you are a little bit squidgy, you can become a little bit more toned and less squidgy. Now, a question has come through with those percentages. Is that each meal or per day? That is per day, because you're going to do yourself a number if you try and do that each meal, because it's just not going to happen. So this is why planning ahead is the best way to do it, because that's what I did with Abby this morning. I looked at her day yesterday. She's very regimented in what she eats, and she eats generally the same kind of thing each day. So I just copied her day over to the next day so that I could make tweaks and adjustments, so I could see how the wheel was then shifting on your MyFitnessPal. So planning ahead is really, really important when you start to take into account the macronutrients. But remember, calories are first. The macronutrients are just like the 2 millimeter shifts. They're just the fine tuning. It's just the tweaks. It's like decorating your bookcase. It's not the whole house. That made no sense.
You're reaching for something there. I've got no idea where that one goes. Don't worry about the bookcase thing. Everything was great, and then we up a bookcase in there.
I was just going to line it. Everyone's a little serious.
Like the flower over there, Sheridan. Like a leaf falling off a flower.
So your target is going to be at the end of your day to be around that 50, 30, 20%. Now you can adjust in MyFitnessPal those percentages accordingly, so that you know what you're targeting. And looking at your MyFitnessPal, you can actually see for a day where your wheel is sitting, so that you can see, all right, I'm a little heavy on the fat, I need to tone it back, etc., etc. Now, how do you build this? The easiest place to start is to start with your protein first, because 9.5 times out of 10, protein is accompanied by fat. It's really easy to bump up your fat. It's super easy. But the hardest place you're probably going to struggle most with getting your protein up. So start by planning your protein first. But remember, calories are number one, and then macros. This is just the fine tuning. So how to build your meal plan is, I always recommend starting with your protein first and going from there, because carbs are super easy to hit. It's vegetables, it's fruits, it's all of that kind of stuff. You can have toast, etc., etc. But starting with your protein first, because fat accompanies that. It's very, very, very unlikely that you'll ever need to bump up your fat. Very unlikely. You're going to also have a hard time trying to reduce the fat.
And when it comes to the other flip side of that too, that's when you're really focusing on the macros. If you're still just focusing on the numbers as the primary thing, which is what we always say, then you enter what you love to eat first into your day. So it may not be that you want to enter the protein first, but you may love a Kit Kat. I use those because we're eating a lot of those at the moment, Sheridan and I are. So we would enter the Kit Kat in first, so that my wheel starts shifting. So I already know when I have that thing, it's high in carbohydrates and it has an element of fat to it. So I'm already shifted into the carbohydrate zone, and then I can add my proteins in, but that's a non-negotiable. Now, this is why I'm saying this is because if you go out for dinner with someone and you're going to McDonald's and that's what you're about to have that night, that's the first thing that goes into your meal. So you don't start the day and wait for dinner to enter it. You go, I'm going to Macca's with my friends. I know I'm going to go there. I know I'm going to have a Big Mac combo and I'm probably going to make it a large. So that goes in first, which means that my number has shrunk dramatically for the rest of the day, which means I have to make all my decisions based off that. But the cool part is when you do put that Big Mac combo into your MyFitnessPal, you can look at the dimensions of the wheel and just look exactly what that comes up as. It is slanted massively in fat. So if you wanted to, with the remaining calories you have left for your food for that day, knowing that it's high in fat, you could eat very lean carbohydrates to keep that balanced.
So you wouldn't go to a cafe and have a smashed avo because that's going to be high in fat. So you would adjust accordingly from that. Now, going next level is how do you then build your meals? So if you're doing if you're a typical Aussie family, you're meat and 3 veg, how do you kind of construct that to try and roughly hit those numbers? Well, a really good basic rule of thumb for this is your protein is the size of your palm. Now, if I show you my palm versus Matt's palm, very different amounts.
And this, sorry, no, flatten your hand up, please. That is not your palm. You don't include these little fingers at the top. It's the palm in here, which when you look at that, it's almost embarrassing when you compare that to probably what you may be eating. Because reality is that is generally the right source of protein and right source of volume that you need to have in your body. And it generally sits within a certain amount of grams. You'll find that you'll go, wow, that's really consistent with the meat and all that stuff. So that palm is a great way for the protein source. So be it fish, meats and stuff like that.
Two fists together is your carbohydrates.
Again, for sizes, mine versus Sheridan's, I get more, but relative to my size and
to our numbers that we've calculated anyway.
And that's a real simple way if you can't work it out. So if you go out for dinner and you go, okay, cool, this is a big meal. I haven't counted for it. How do I count for it? I know that if I have the palm size of this massive steak that's on my plate and I have 2 fistfuls, I'm going to be relatively okay with what I've got on my plate. I'm going to ask to take the rest of it home and I'll smash that tomorrow. And that's okay to do that. Like, don't think that's rude. That's awesome. That's disciplined at a table when maybe there's too much on the plate.
Now you'll notice that we didn't give you a measurement for fat because there's no need for it because I promise you've already got plenty of it in your diet. It's accompanied the protein anyway. So if you start with those 2 things, that's kind of going to be a really easy cheat sheet on how to get there. Without having, especially if you're going out, without having to weigh everything, et cetera, et cetera.
And because we've been going for a long time, I'm going to wrap this up really quickly. Number one thing is that caloric number or calorie number that you're running on. That is our primary focus always at the end of the day. So regardless of what happens with the macros, that is our number one. Okay. So that's what you really need to go. As long as you hit that every day, you're still going to see results. When the other stuff is just fine tuning. So I just need you to make that really super clear that is always your primary concern. If you don't nail this, don't bog down on it. Tomorrow's a new day. Literally, that's about all the thought you need to give it and go, how do I change things slightly? And how do I get that down a little bit? Don't overcomplicate it. Just, I hit my numbers. That's a start. I nailed this. Double whammy. Go me. Awesome. Second one, carbs are your friend. They're not the enemy. They can turn to fat, but the process takes forever. It uses a lot of energy to do it. And the chances of you doing it is extreme for you to be doing that. You're eating way too much carbohydrates. So the challenge isn't that the carbs are turning to fat. The challenge is you're eating too much. That's the reality of it. It's a bit embarrassing. You're like, oh my God, I just eat too much. Not rocket science. Let's not overcomplicate this thing, right? 1 gram of carbohydrates is 4.5 calories. We're going to move to proteins now. Protein repairs the hair, the skin, the nails, and it repairs your muscles. And every excess bit that you have poos out the back. Pretty simple.
See you later.
1 gram of protein is 4.5 calories. Go to Fat Town, baby. Pretty simple, straightforward process. Fat, good, bad, doesn't really matter. Again, like the carbohydrates though, good fats have added benefits like minerals again and different things that they come with that bad fats don't have. That's the difference between the two. That's why they're good and bad. Okay. So don't hang up on that too much. Good fat, bad fat still just slips on down that slippery slide, packs in like a mud bank and just keeps stacking with the ability to double and multiply and keep going crazy. Whew. Anything else, Dennis?
We have not mentioned the 4th macronutrient, alcohol. And
alcohol.
I know some of your ears perked up when you're like, Oh, alcohol. Hello, my friend. The tricky one about alcohol is that it is a fuel source, yes, not a recommended fuel source. What happens is everything else in the body stops because it needs to burn the alcohol first because it is a toxin. It's a fuel source, yes, but it's a toxin. So it's got to get rid of it. So it's not ideal to include alcohol. That's why in your MyFitnessPal it doesn't have an alcohol section as well. I just need to clarify that. However, just like everything in moderation, a little bit of everything is totally fine.
There's nothing wrong with having a glass of wine or a beer or something. I need you to be really clear on that.
But don't look to it as a primary source of fuel, please.
It's there to be enjoyed and not be feared. But again, if you're having 3, 4, 5 glasses of wine, that you still have to count those things. And 1 gram of alcohol is 7 calories. So that's where it catches people out. And like Sheridan said, it is a toxin, which means that the reason you feel so energetic, you feel so good, I love having a drink, is because it's vibrating to get rid of it. It's trying to oxidize it off.
Burn it, and it's got to burn it fast.
That's why the next day you generally feel like crap, because you have a crash because your body's been overdriving and not processing the energy of all the food and stuff. It's actually been trying to get rid of all the oxidizing off all the alcohol in your body, which is why you feel tired the next day. It's why you feel hungover, because you're drained of energy. And then generally when you're on the beers or whatever it is you're doing, you generally swing by Macca's, you throw something down, high calories, and your body's not processing it, which means that it stacks and it sets and it stores. Hence we get these tons.
Because you've had all this energy source, all this fuel source, and you haven't accounted for the calories of that, which you've got to burn off. And then you've taken all this excess food, the kebab on the way home, and that just goes straight to Fat Town because it's excess food and you haven't stuck to your numbers. Ooh. Whereas drinking alcohol, but accounting for it, totally fine as long as it's within your numbers. All right, we have a couple of questions that have come through. So first of all, the macronutrients, do that as a daily thing. It's a day as a whole, because if you try and do it per meal, you'll drive yourself nuts and insane, and it's too hard basket. The next one is recommendation of foods to build protein when you can't eat red meat. Great question. We've actually got in your I think it's in the nutrition plan, is protein rich foods. If not, I'm going to repost that in the Facebook group after this anyway. There's a massive list of protein rich foods, everywhere from meat to seafood to vegetables to vegan options, etc. The red meat is like obviously the easiest and quickest way to bump up protein. I too don't eat red meat either, so there's ways to do it. My preferred source is tuna. I really like it. Tuna and fish and stuff like that too. So there's lots of options. The next one is, when you say you don't undershoot your calories, how much are you talking? This is a little bit scalable, but we generally say try to get it within 100 to 200 calories. 200 calories maximum, like under. You really want to try and get as close to that number as possible, because that number is already quite a large deficit, especially if you're doing this the rapid weight loss versus the steady weight loss. So we want you to get as close as possible. Reason being is it's not going to be detrimental to your success, but it's going to make sure that you have enough fuel to put the energy and perform through your exercise and your daily tasks, so that you can get fitter and stronger, so that you can burn more calories at rest
and not be grumpy
and like
hungry,
blasé and brain foggy.
And quite often when people are struggling to hit that number, it's just because they're focusing on doing the health thing, like, oh, let's only have salads, let's only do this because I'm doing a challenge and I won't have this. That's the wrong way to do it, because I haven't been doing that. So why would you start doing it now just because you're doing a challenge? Yes, there's heaps of benefits from it, but if you don't like a salad, don't eat the salad. Like, you don't have to have it. So what you need to do is find ways to meet what you love to eat and then work it out from there. And it's really simple, just to tweak something just ever so slightly. People that love having oats for breakfast, and they might be having half a cup of oats, just by increasing that to a cup of oats, which isn't huge amounts of volume, but it is a shift. It bumps those calories up really quickly. And all of a sudden, those 200-300 that you're short each day, you hit your marker.
And so if you look at it like you're 400 calories under, that's a whole nother meal. Yes, it is. But if you slightly increase each meal throughout the day, little bits accumulate, and you can.
Did you know that 9 almonds is over 100 calories?
What?
9 over 100 for 9 of them little things.
So there's easy ways to bump those up. etc., etc. Now, another great question has come through. Can you actually build muscle whilst in a calorie deficit? Yes, you can, because a calorie deficit is going to help you burn more fuel, which is fat town, baby. So that's going to strip the fat. The way to build muscle is by applying resistance to the muscles. It's by lifting heavy weights, heavy things. That's how we build muscle. So regardless of your fuel, you of course need to have fuel going in, but a calorie deficit, 100% you can definitely build muscle during that. And what actually happens is whilst you're doing that, you're stripping the fat, you get muscles popping out quickly because you're toned, which is just a fancy word for lean and strong.
Cool.
I think that answers that pretty quickly. The
right,
answer to that is 100% yes, you can. And that's, again, why we want you to get as close to those numbers as possible, because if you're in a huge deficit, way more aggressive than the numbers that we've given you, and you don't have the energy to lift as heavy as you would be able to if you were eating enough fuel, then you're not going to get the same kind of result. So if you can lift 100 kilos, we want to try and get you to lift 105 and then 110. We want to keep trying to increase that so that we are then promoting muscle growth, because you've got to lift heavy things to get stronger. We don't lift light weights many times to get stronger, because otherwise we'd just lift loaves of bread. So, but if you don't have the energy to lift that 100 kilos that you usually do, and you're only lifting 80 kilos or whatever it might be, the numbers doesn't really matter. Just trying to get the point across is you need to have the fuel to be able to lift your full potential. So if you're in an extreme deficit, you're most likely going to possibly be tired, lethargic, not have as much energy, etc., etc. Now, if you're overshooting your calories and you need to rein it back in, that's when you probably need to address when you're eating, so that you have an energy source before you work out. The timing for you will be different. Some people can't eat half an hour before. Some people can't eat 2 hours before. I'm more in that couple of hour bracket. But maybe then if you've got to try really hard to reduce your numbers, because you're overshooting quite a bit, then you need to look at when you're eating so that you've got the energy at the right times that you need it, and how you're eating food too, your breakdown of the food, so your macronutrient buffer and stuff like that. Again, if you're having too much fat, that's going to shoot the calories up pretty quickly, because it's double the caloric value of carbs and proteins. Cool. I think we've answered all those questions. I'm going to put it on. I'm so sorry we've gone so long. We could literally go for another 4 hours if you let us. Does anyone have any further questions before we go? Just wave at us if you do, and I can help you unmute, or you can type it in. But as always, we're so here to answer your questions. If you want a little strategy call or support call, I've done another one of those today. So we're here to help. Please just reach out and let us help you. We will be uploading this. You can also watch the first time that we did this, which has pretty much the same information on it too. I will upload the protein-rich food document again, just so you can give that a whirl, because I'm pretty sure it's in the nutrition plan. But anyway, I'll tag you in it anyway. But then if you do have any other questions, please reach out. But hopefully that gives you a little insight into macronutrients. But remember, your calories come first.
That's it. Don't bog down in the detail.
Nope. Cool.
Woo-hoo.
You guys are awesome. Again, thank you guys so much for investing into you and spending your Thursday evening with us. I'm so sorry we've gone double the length of what we should have. But like I said, we could keep going all night. But you guys rock. Thank you guys so much. Keep doing what you're doing. Remember, get fit and eat the foods that you love within the numbers, and then make minor tweaks. But you guys rock. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Mwah. Have a great evening, and we'll see you soon. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.